Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Still the 3 o'clock even, so if anybody pops in after we get going, that's fine. Welcome to today's session, MDTP Diagnostic Testing Project. MDTP, I guess I better just start from the beginning. Hi, I'm Kimberly Salmon-Diego, and I'm the director of MDTP. Everybody's going to laugh at me because we've been sitting here chatting lots of things on our mind. So thank you for joining us for session. This is session 4. Is that correct, Carol?
No, this is session 3.
This is session 3. This is our high school session 3.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be looking at data today. And so I have a few panelists here that I want to introduce. First, MDTP is a jointly funded project from the CSU and the UC. We're actually funded from CAP, which is a California Academic Partnership Program. And they provide all the resources that we have to be able to provide MDTP to you for free. So everything that we're doing right now is grant funded. So we appreciate that support, and we appreciate you taking the time to spend a little bit of learning with us today. We are going to be presenting content for about 30-35 minutes, and we're going to be following up with a question and answer session at the end. So today presenting will be Carol Treglio. So hi, Carol.
Hi.
Carol is our outreach facilitator from UC San Diego. And so she works with math educators in the San Diego region. We also have our outreach facilitator, Pat King from UC Davis.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Pat. Pat works with all of the Northern California educators in the region. And then with her is Julie Mustard. And Julie is the MDTP coordinator. So she's the one that works on all the logistics on how things work in the Northern California area. And we have with us also Terry Gibbs-Burke. And Terry, hi Terry. Terry is the outreach facilitator for the UCLA region. And Terry is also the associate director for Smarter Balanced. So we have quite a wealth of knowledge here. Karen is on the background, and she's working through the director's office to support all of our work. I think that's everybody. Is that everybody here today? Yeah, okay. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Carol, and Carol's going to be the presenter today.
Hi, good afternoon. Welcome. We're going to talk about how we access and interpret in using the MDTP results. So I'm thinking that you've given the assessment and are wanting to look at how you might analyze look at and figure out what you have, and then interpret your data, figure out where it lies in the platform, and then using the results. So thinking about, once you have this data, what do you do with it? So we'll begin to talk about that. That is more, using the results is more actually in webinar number 4, which is next week. Okay, so today we're going to basically talk about several things. We'll spend most of the time talking about the three particular buckets, where we can look at the topic data. So that gives you basically the overall view of your class. I like to think of it as the balcony view with respect to the topics being assessed. We'll take a look at item analysis, and from that will give us a little bit more information about our students. We can begin to identify the strengths by taking a look at specific numbers. We can take a look at the misconceptions, unfinished learning, and gaps. And we'll get into more specificity as we go along. We'll then take a look at really going down to the fine tooth comb. We'll begin to take a look at item distractors, and then we can really take a look at what was that misconception, if it was a misconception, or was it unfinished learning, or was it a gap? So we'll begin to take a look at those pieces. And then we will actually, I'll take you onto the platform, and we'll just see where the different pieces lie so that you can actually then begin to access your own data. Okay, so we're all living in this virtual world. And so this is your class. Who knows what they're doing. They could be online at home. They could be online at Starbucks. They could be working in pods. They could be you could be having a hybrid. So there's a variety of things that you're dealing with. And so it's really imperative at the beginning of the year to find out where they are, because they've been living in this virtual world since March. So who knows what, if they've had much at all of learning during that period of time, or the degree of learning. So it's kind of hit or miss. You don't know. So it's really a good idea to inform your instruction by taking a look at how well they understand those prerequisite skills. So let's dig into that. Okay, so effective use of data, I think of it basically, we think of it in three buckets. We're basically identifying what it is. We're identifying the content. We're analyzing it. We're identifying the student's current understandings. So it's basically a picture in time, right? So we take a look at a snapshot of where they are whenever you test it, today, tomorrow, whenever that happens. And then we begin to take a look at, and we look at it for understanding, do they have misconceptions? Do they really understand it? If they really understand it, we can move on, right? We then unpack the progressions. And so that means we're going to take a look at the content of the item, but we're going to also take a look at the content of your course and see where it matches. And thinking about how does that item bridge into your course. So thinking about those essential understandings that students need to master your content. And then this is really what's going to happen next week, thinking about strategies and designing learning experiences to meet those learning goals. And so this is going to happen on the 30th. Okay, so this is where your data lies. It's where you set up your class. It is where your data is now housed. And so there are basically several different parts to it. So we'll take a look at the summary. First of all, starting out with the summary. The summary, again, gives you that broad view of where your students are. When you're looking at the summary, we're going to take a look at a couple of different things. We'll take a look at the topic critical levels. We'll take a look at class average topic score. And we'll take a look at class average item score per topic. And each one of them tells a little bit of a different story. But again, it takes a look at that overview of your class. So this particular test that we're taking a look at, it was a high school readiness test. It was given to an integrated math class a few years ago. It's similar to the current test, but it's not exactly the same. But regardless, we can see the topics that were assessed. So data analysis and probability statistics, decimals, exponents, fractions, functions, geometry, integers, and linear equations and inequalities. So that we had those eight topics assessed. Notice also in here in the item count is different depending upon the topic. So in data analysis, there were five items. In fractions, there were 7 items. So there are a variety of, and in geometry, there were 8. And so not all topics are tested the same way. We have something called a critical level. And the critical level really is the level for which it is the number, the minimum number of correct responses in that particular topic to show adequate preparation in the topic. So, for example, for data analysis and probability statistics, we had 5 items. The critical level was 4. And out of my class, I'll pretend it's my class, 26% of the students met that critical level. So we'll take a look at it. So that gives us some information. We can see that in the class, they scored pretty well on functions. 49% of the class met the critical level of 2 out of the 3 questions given. All right, and then whereas fractions, our dear friend fractions, 11% of the class met the critical level of 5 out of the 7 questions assessed. So it gives us a bit of information about our class. Then we can take a look at the profile, the same class, and we notice that we have the class average topic score. So it's the average number of correct responses in that particular topic. So for example, in data analysis, probability and statistics, there were about 51%. Functions, it's about 49%. So they did pretty well there. But when we take a look at fractions, we have 32%, and decimals 34%. So this geometry also looks like a problem area. So this seems to be a problem that we may want to take a look at. And it's the beginning of the school year, and I know that within the context of the units, the unit that's coming up, there will be a lot of fractions and decimals in it. And so therefore I want to pay attention to those items. Okay, so now we can take a little bit closer look. So this gives us a little bit better view of the items themselves. And so these are the items that were tested in that topic of fractions. And we could see that question number 4, 57% of the class, or 57% of the class did get that correct. That's pretty good. So that shows that they're strong in whatever that is tested. So we'll have to really take a look at the item. Whereas for number 17, we had 31% of the class did get that correct. And then we have some issues, maybe 31 and 41, where 31, 20% of the class did get that correct, and 41, 17%. So it may be because they got tired by the time they took question 41, we don't know. We'll have to take a look at the item and really begin to analyze it. So if we think about, we'll go next into the item analysis. And so the item analysis helps to identify those strengths, unfinished learning, and gaps. By strengths, we know that most of the students would answer that question correctly. And everyone can kind of figure that out. That's fairly easy. Unfinished learning, and sometimes it's a toss-up, but if you have a misconception, a large percent of the class chose a particular incorrect option. So if you have, for example, 50% of the class chose an incorrect option, it shows that there's somewhat of a misconception. Maybe not for all students, but for 50% of them. And it could be an educated guess where all the options are somewhat evenly selected. So, I mean, that doesn't necessarily happen. If you have 4 distractors, it would be 25, 25, 25, which never really happens, but it gets close. And for gaps, we have to pay attention to, did they omit the problem? Because that tells us something. If they omitted it, that means that they didn't have enough information, background information, to be able to enter the problem. So there's a gap. So when we analyze the item analysis, it will tell us that, but there are lots of pieces to it. So we can take a look at average time that it took per item, the percent or the number correct. We see the selection of the distractors. We can see which ones were omitted. We can see which ones were not seen, which tells us some things too. And then we can review the data for strengths, misconceptions, unfinished learning, and gaps. When you, for the not seen, the item analysis really helps with that, because I was looking at a particular school's data, and we were talking about the data, and the results didn't look all that good. So, but then I took a look at the item analysis, and I found that a good percentage of the class didn't finish the test. So of course that skews the data, and that tells you something, that perhaps they didn't have long enough to take the test. So they may need to go back and finish it. And you can do that probably within the next day after you give the test. So this is what the item analysis looks like. We can export as a PDF. You can always export all of these. You can export it as an Excel worksheet, which I'll show you that I did later. You can view it by percent or by number. You can view it by item number, as it's shown here. You can view it by topic. And what happens is that it clusters all the topic, all the items with that particular topic together, which is helpful. We have we can see the average time, correct. We can see the distractors. Notice that in under E column, it's all zeroed out, and that says that there are only 4 distractors on each of the items. And we can see that some of the items were omitted, but none in this particular portion of that item analysis. They at least had gone through all of those. So if we take a look at, for example, number 1. Number 1 is on exponents. It took 94 seconds to do that particular item, about a minute and a half. 71% of the class did get it correct. So that really shows a strength. However, when I'm getting into a unit that deals with exponents, I'm going to want to maybe look at that item and find out why 20% of my class selected option A. But I'll only do that when I get into that particular unit, because you don't want to do all of these at once. Under linear, right? So here I have, it takes 88 seconds for number 3 to be accomplished. 31% of the class did get that correct. So for that 31%, it is a strength. I noticed that 14% of the class omitted the problem. So that shows that for 14%, that shows a gap of some sort. However, overall, we can take a look at this. We can see that there were a lot of it looks like misconceptions, because these are fairly evenly distributed, not exactly, but fairly evenly. So to me, this means that there is some unfinished learning going on. And so we'll get into more language around it in a few seconds. We can take a look at this geometry item, 96 seconds. There were 49% did get it correct. Notice also the correct distractor is in green. It highlights it in green so that you know what the correct distractor is. And then if we take a look at this one, many of the 49% of the class did get it correct, a strength for them, but 26% of the class selected C. So I might want to know why. So getting into more specificity around, or putting some language around strengths, common misconceptions, unfinished learning, and gaps. We can, and looking here, we can see that places that where we might find that. So determining the strengths, we can generally do that in the item analysis. Common misconceptions, really getting into those distractors. And for unfinished learning in the item analysis, and gaps in the item analysis. So let's put some language around it. So for determining strengths, we said that was most students in the class chose the correct solution. And that's really important, because that tells us that those students are strong and can then begin to access our curriculum. So that means that you don't necessarily have to really do much in the way of review, but you can move more into your curriculum for those students that was a strength. For unfinished learning, and this is where students omitted at a high rate, that means that they really didn't have much of an idea of, of how to enter the problem. So thinking about, okay, so how is this relevant to our course? And how are we going to re-engage students and practice so that they can move into our curriculum, because that's what we need to do this year, is move into our curriculum and um, bridge into the curriculum. You have to do that. You don't really have time to reteach this year. Um, Items where all options are chosen somewhat evenly. That is that shows, oh, this was unfinished learning. This is a gap. And this is important because it says that they're, they really don't know. In both cases, they really don't know, right? So thinking about both of these, it's determining strategies. And in this case, for new content. And misconceptions, and this is where a large percent of the students select an incorrect option. Well, we can find that, again, we'll find that more in the item itself. We'll take a look at that and we'll determine how is this relevant to the content of our course, and thinking about how we're going to, or what are the strategies we're going to use to engage and practice over time. And we'll get into that piece more next week. Okay, so what I did here was, as I said, you can download into an Excel file. So that's what I did. But I really wanted to take a close look at fractions and decimals because my first unit has a whole lot of that in it. And so what I did was I took all the items and I copied it over and eliminated all but fractions and decimals. The one difficulty with this is we don't have anything in green. So we could take a look at the number correct here, or the percent correct, and we can see that that percentage is under C. So the correct option is C in number 4. 50%, 7% of the class selected C. And so one of the things I would like you to think about now, and you should have the item analysis guide as well. I believe it was sent to you. If not, it's in the chat. You can download it and take a look at it. It's actually something nice and handy, especially when you go about doing your own analysis. You want to have that. So I'm going to ask for you to find an example of an item that shows strength and put that item number in the chat. And Pat will let me know when a few people have answered.
All right, we have several items.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I see several different items. Okay, good. And I do see number 4, which I've definitely, yes, that's definitely one. And possibly, yeah, 25 is 49% of the class did get that correct. So that's a strength for those 25, or for those 49%. Okay, so now we want to think about unfinished learning. Okay, so unfinished learning, remember, is that area where a high number of students omitted the problem.
Actually, this is where it might be distractors would be evenly displayed. High admittance would be a gap. Unless you're combining those two together.
Yeah, okay. All right, thank you.
So it could be distributed evenly, or it could also be highly emitted.
Yeah, okay, yeah. All right, yes, it could. And those two really are very closely aligned. They both show that there really isn't a clear understanding. Do we have some responses?
Yes, maybe one more. There we go. Let's go ahead.
Okay. Good. Okay. All right. And then one more. An example that shows a misconception. And remember, a misconception is an item where a large number of the class selected an incorrect option. Okay. How are we doing?
Good. We have several selections.
Okay, perfect. So I can move on. Okay. So that gives us a good amount of information. But again, we really want to take a look at the items themselves, because that really it really begins to hone in on what those strengths, the misconceptions, and unfinished learning or gaps happen to be. So we have to categorize them. And the thing that we do want to deal with here is thinking about, why did the student select each distractor? Let's go back one more. And then what concept does this reveal, and where does it fit into the curriculum? So first one is, this is for this particular problem, we had on fractions, and they're putting the fractions in order to some degree, and you're trying to find the largest. So it's a comparison of fractions. And we see that 9% omitted it, 3% didn't see it, 20% of the class did get it correct. Notice it's in green. But I would 54%, so this is clearly a misconception. 54% of the class selected A. So thinking about that, I would say that, well, 3/4 is a very common fraction for them. It's something that they recognize. So that may be the reason, and I'm just guessing, putting a guess, an educated guess on this. I would say that that might be the reason why they selected A. It's just something that's familiar to them. Okay, so here's another one that's really kind of interesting. We see 6% omitted the problem. Everyone did get to 17. We see that 31% of the class did get the correct answer. So why do you think, oh, I had the wrong thing here. Why do you think that they answered B, not A? That's a miss. Why do you think 31% of the students selected B?
We have agreement that many saw that they added numerators and denominators together. And just a time check, Carol, it's 3:30.
Thank you. Okay, and here's another one which is very similar to it, only now we're dealing with mixed numbers. Good old Evan. And we see that with this problem, we have 23% of the class did get it correct. And if we think about B, 31% of the class did select B. So more pulled this than any of the others. So it could be a misconception. It's not really evenly distributed, although somewhat, maybe. There's definitely some learning that needs to happen. That's for sure. And if we take a look at what happened with B, if we add the whole numbers together and use the same strategy for adding the fractions, we will get B. So it begins to show a profile of where, in those two problems, where the strengths and some possible areas of growth need to happen. Okay, so we use a diagnostic tool to determine strengths or individual students. We determine common errors, misconceptions, unfinished learning, and gaps. We look at the distractors to find the nature of the error, the misconception. Is it an error in using or carrying out a procedure? Because that could happen. Is it a misconception or is it a miscalculation? Is it incomplete processing? And do the results indicate unfinished learning? So these are the things that you kind of need to ask yourself when you're thinking about the diagnostic piece. And then thinking about how does it impact the learning? And that, of course, we'll deal more with next week. And then, yeah, so that's next week. So, and then one of the things else I wanted to show you is that this is a really nice feature on this platform before we actually go to the platform. And that is that we can make a comparison. So if we have a class and we give the test, let's say in September, and we give the same test again to the same cohort of students, let's say in December, we can determine the growth, which I think is a really nice feature. Okay, so I want to now go to the website itself. Okay. This one, I think. Okay.
You're there.
Yes.
But you want to click on educators.
Thank you. Readiness. Okay, and so I'm going to now take a look at the data live. And so you'll get your, and these are not the real names. So let's say we take a look at this particular report. Okay, so we can see the summary, which is the same piece. I took it apart really to show you on the slides. We can go to topic summary, which is kind of nice. It's a bar graph of each of the topics and the items in the topics. We can take a look at item analysis. And I mentioned to you that you could look at it by topic as well as by item. So if you look at it by topic, all the topics are listed together so that you can really begin to, you don't necessarily have to download. You can actually now take a look at fractions and decimals here. When you want to go to an item from the page, if you click on the number, it takes you to the item. And then one of the nice things about this is that the correct response is always in green. But the nice thing about that also is if you click on that distractor, it gives you the list of students who selected that distractor. If it's an incorrect, it will give you, again, the list of students who selected that, as well as a possible supporting information. It could be some misinterpretation. It could be lots of different things. Okay. Okay, we can then take a look at time that took each of the items, and we can take a look at what took the longest and the shortest for all the items in the test. We can take a look at individual results, which is very nice. So in the individual results, we see the students listed, the percent that they did get it correct, the raw score, the topic proficiency, all of it. This is a whole profile of each individual. Notice also that some of them are asterisks, and that means that they have met that proficiency level in those particular topics. If we click on the student name, well, in this case, it's a number, we will get that individual report or diagnosis. And then we can export, we select here, we can export the student letter, which is nice too. So it's all in one place. If you can also, if you wanted to, you could, under resources, you can, there are tutorials that will take you through everything. And there are also test descriptions so that you can actually take a look at the test items for yourself. Okay, go back, share. Okay. All right, so, okay, so this is us. You can also go to the website at UCSD and find out who the contact information is for your region. It lists by region and who to contact, because we do webinars, but we also are able to come out to sites and do any, and we can work with a teacher or many teachers. We can work with a whole school district. So we work in a lot of a variety of ways at sites to look at your own data and see where that falls. Okay, so now, okay, so this leaves now 7 minutes for questions.
Thank you, Carol. That was great. I'm going to, while you were generating questions, Pat probably has been looking at this. I'm going to be putting in a survey in the chat. So please be able to fill out the survey for us so we can get some feedback on our sessions to see if there's something that you would like to see in the future or something we can improve on. We really appreciate that. So I'm putting that in the chat now. Okay. Pat, do you have any questions?
Yes, so I'll share one question that came up. Whoops, I just lost my chat. There we go. And this was, I'm going to present my data to my site admin from a district point of view. Which report would be best?
So from a district, yeah, from a district point of view. Okay, so you might want to take a look at the district data. You could take a look at a particular site. You could take a look at several sites.
So it looks like a site admin. So when you showed putting the reports together.
Yes.
You put,
okay. So yes, in putting the reports together, what you would do is you would go to that particular site. It's listed. You would have that listed, and you would click at the very top. There's a little box that you would click to highlight all of them, and then you get a combined report. So does that answer the question?
Did anybody want for me to demonstrate that?
Or I could do that,
That
yeah.
might be a good idea.
Go
Yeah.
ahead and demonstrate
would
that.
I'm not sure what
demonstrate.
that would be. Yes.
And
Yeah.
then I'm going to share the MDTP website for when you finish that, Carol.
Okay.
Just
Yeah, somehow it didn't show. Okay.
just share your screen.
Yeah.
Um,
So again,
so
sharing my screen.
we had a question about where to access different materials. So I'm going to take us to the MDTP website as soon as Carol's done showing this part, and where you can see quite a few.
Somehow I'm not able to share again. Wait a minute, down here. Okay.
Or Kim, if you already have yours.
I'll
If you have
share
yours,
real
why don't you
quick.
share it?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll share real quick, and then as Carol's getting up. So our
There you go.
website is pretty robust in all the information that we have to share with educators. And the first thing you want to look at is maybe who's your regional site, because there's going to be your point of contact. And they're based in regions here. So if you aren't quite sure and you want to look at regional sites, if you just click on regional sites, it tells the counties in each of our sites. So we have 4 UCs and 4 CSUs across the state that support the math educators. If you wanted to see basically our homepage is kind of, if you scroll down, it'll give you news. We have some news about remote testing. We also have some news about some of the webinars, but we also have on here our resources page, which is really cool. We have all the webinars that we've done so far, plus the ones that are coming. So once it loads in, you can see that there are videos. This is a really great resource. From our resource page, also, we have learning modules. So MDTP's created learning modules, some practice tests. These are for students who are bridging from high school to college. They're possibly taking a placement test in some of the colleges, because many colleges do use MDTP for diagnostic tests for diagnostic. So those are things like that. Carol, are you ready? Do you need me to?
I can share.
Okay, so I think that I had.
It says I can't share because you're sharing.
I'm no longer sharing. There you go.
Okay. It still says I can't share.
Okay, let me see if Karen made me the host. So that's right. Okay, go ahead, try now.
Okay, so share. I can go back.
Had
Okay,
some technical difficulties. So Nancy had asked a question, said she had some difficulties getting in. So this webinar will be posted on, probably by next week, we'll have the recording posted for you to see.
So I'm going to go all the way back to, let's see.
Actually, if you just go to the test site, maybe, so that we can show them how to actually combine reports.
Okay, so, well, that's where I'm on the test. I have to go back to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, here we are. Okay, so
We don't see your screen yet.
No.
You don't see my screen yet?
You're still on your PowerPoint.
Okay, so, I have to have a new share. Okay. Yeah. Now do you see it?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So if I go, let's say by district, I'll just take a large district, and I'll take these are district.
You it might be easier just to go to classes and go to assign tests.
Okay, go to class.
And then go to assign tests.
And yeah.
No, go back up to classes, and then select assign tests.
Okay.
And then a bunch of tests will pop up.
Right.
You can pick a test. Yeah.
So let me take one that's relevant. Let's say this one.
Okay. And then you can filter by term, or just filter. Yeah.
Filter by term, which would be this one.
So Carol gets quite a bit of data here.
Yeah, I always get a lot of data. Okay.
So hit filter. Go ahead and hit filter.
And filter.
Yes, there you go.
And then I have a whole bunch of districts. So I'm gonna
just select the first top 3. If you see, you have like a little the dots on the side there, right? Those you
Yeah.
can select just ones that have some, they won't select if there's no data. Oh, there you go. And so once you've selected 2 or more, you get the little green tab.
Right. So over here it says view combined report. And so then that gives me all that information. It gives me the same information that I showed you.
Yeah, this is, yeah.
It just combines it. And so you can do it for a whole site.
Mhm.
I've done that. I've actually combined them also for a whole district.
That's right.
Right. So you can do all of that, which is nice.
And,
Is that in the tutorials?
it is in the tutorials.
Good. So that would be another place to look.
Yeah, in our resources, we have our tutorials. Another great feature of if you're running a professional development day, professional training, and you want to show cohort data, so your whole school's data,
Right.
it's good to do that. So you are looking at trends over a whole school.
Right.
Maybe you want to make some school goals or initiatives, and you want to look for things in your overall pacing guide or your planning.
Right. And we'll come out and individualize if you need something other than just this, and you would like somebody to come out and personalize with your own data, we can do that too.
And so there was a question about which would be the best point of view to use if you're going to present data to your site from an admin. I think that if you wanted to present, I think the best views are the item analysis view, and
Yes.
you can drill in by topic, so you can be specific, and you can also look at the topic views if you want to just be very, say, we're going to plan, we're going to have our next lesson, our next unit's going to be on linear and expressions. So you want to look at linear and just look at the topic, and then you can kind of drill into those items around that topic.
Yeah. Yeah, you're not going to want to, unless you're going into specificity, you don't necessarily want to go into specific questions, although there may be, you might want to.
Right.
If
you look at the summary page, you can see, as Carol showed, you can kind of click in and say, which are the topics are students coming with this most strengths in, and which are the topics they may need more support, right? They might find more challenges and need more support. So you can sort and look at it in that way too. And then you can get some district-wide goals. You can get some school-wide goals. You can get, as a teacher, you can get your own goals for my cohort, my class.
Right.
There's not a lot of questions. So does anybody have any more questions for us? Carol, I think that means you did just a really great job.
Oh, thank you.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us.
Thank you. It was, yeah.
There's a lot of information. Next week, remember, Carol's going to be presenting the You Have Data Now What steps.
Right.
Getting some ideas about when you learn something about a misconception, how to re-engage learners in content to help them bridge to access the content of your course. We might need to unpack and go back a little bit to bridge that learning. So Carol's going to be really teasing that out in those next sessions for middle school and high school next week. Is that correct, Carol?
Yes.
That's right. And then just to put on your schedule, Terry and I are going to be presenting on written response items in October. So we'll be putting that on our website and also sending out master blasts through the MDTP site users. And I did share this survey. I want to remind you that in the chat, there is a survey. I can put it in there again if you need me to put it in there so you don't have to scroll through that chat. But we really appreciate your feedback on the survey. And we'll hang out here for a few more minutes in case anybody has questions. And if you're still here, I'll allow you to talk, and then you can chat with us directly.